Trae Young's available. Trae Young's cheap. The Jazz can do it easily. Should they? Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you for making Locked On Jazz your first listen, and thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Welcome to the Everydayers. Thank you. You make Locked On what it is. You're awesome. On today's show, I'm going to try to look at three Denny Advita baskets that were particularly seemingly egregious when they happened. Try to show what's going wrong with our defense. Our defense was pretty atrocious last night against the Portland Trailblazers. A defensive rating of 134, which is one of the worst defensive outings I think we've even had all year. We'll discuss what's going on. The defense is 30th in the NBA again. Maybe not surprising, but still there. And we'll talk about it. We'll look at, if we can, we're going to look at three plays in which were most obvious. Last night, just in fairness, was our seventh worst defensive night of the year, which actually might not be good at their six others. Oklahoma City twice, Lakers twice, the Knicks debacle, and then the Warriors game earlier this year. So there have been, our fourth quarter defense brought us back around. But let's start with the story of the NBA, which is that Trae Young and his agent are working on trades. Now, I don't know. By the way, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, Trae Young may be deciding the teams that he's interested in going to. Washington has been mentioned as, surprisingly, once again, one of the worst success rate franchises in the NBA, seems to have the ability to go get a player. It's weird. But let's look at whether the Jazz should be on the phone to, I think it's Alex Mintz, the agent who the Jazz have a good relationship with. I've seen him at a bunch of games in LA. And whether or not the Jazz should get involved. So let's just start with the fundamentals. You can look at it, and it's super easy to figure out what trades are. You guys can all do it on the trade machine. So the Trae Young makes $45.9 million. The Jazz could very easily put together a painless player package and get to that number. Now, what does Atlanta want? Atlanta might think that they're getting a lot of stuff. I actually think at this point, and we'll see whether this turns out to be true, that Atlanta, I think, would be willing to make this deal solely to get out from under the salary. I mean, you could probably try to make some argument that Atlanta's going to have to give something up to get out from under the salary. I don't think Trae Young's trade value is particularly high right now. I don't think it's as low as John Morant's, but I don't think it's particularly high. So he makes $46 million. The Jazz can put together an expiring Yusuf Nurkic contract, Kyle Anderson's contract, and an expiring George Niang. And I think Kyle Anderson has 1 year left on it. And that number, now Atlanta would take in $9 million more than the Jazz on that deal, or $9 million less. So Atlanta would save $9 million, not entirely, but you get it. And the Jazz would bring in Trae Young and then have to re-sign him. I would assume Atlanta's going to want some sort of draft compensation. I don't know if they're going to get it. I really don't know if they're going to get it. So you could trade your 2029 pick if you have to get the deal done, if you really want to get it done. You could trade your Lakers pick next year if that's what the market yields. Everyone's talking about Washington. It's an interesting idea. I don't know whether Washington's giving up any of their young players. You could add in, if there's one of our, if we think it's time to move on from someone, we could add in a player that maybe they would be interested in having and not a draft pick. But fundamentally, the Jazz have Yusuf Nurkic, Kyle Anderson, and George Niang that they could put together in a trade and reach $44 million. That's my point. And I am not utterly convinced that Atlanta's not getting a Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, 3 first-round draft picks here out of this. Washington's going to be able to do something similar with their cap space, with expiring veteran contracts. Because they have the Chris Middleton deal and others. Jordan Poole, they traded already. CJ McCollum, things of that nature. And it won't be hard for Washington, I don't think, to get to $45 million either. Middleton's at 32 expiring. CJ's at 30. They can put in Malachi Branham, who's at $4 million, but they do Chris Middleton and Malachi Branham, and I think they're there. And that deal, I think, works pretty close. Actually, that deal works. How many picks is Washington willing to give up for Trae Young? Maybe not. So the question now, all right, so there's the mechanics of it. If Trae Young is virtually free, but you're going to have to sign him, are you interested? And then the second question is, do you think you could actually rehabilitate Trae Young in a way that you could trade him for more to somebody else later and you end up making a good deal out of it? I never loved that theory. It didn't work with John Collins, didn't work with Colin Sexton, didn't work. And we certainly rehabilitated those guys. They look much better with us than they had beforehand. And then the third question is the elephant in the room that I haven't mentioned 9 minutes into the show is the emergence of Keyonte George mean you just want no part of this anyway? Or you're tired of being the 30th ranked defensive team in the league, so you really don't want to? You're a pretty good offensive team if you're suddenly Trae Young, Keyonte George, Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Ace Bailey. But I don't think you're giving up a lot here. That's my point. I'll be surprised. Maybe there's a first-round draft pick that gets tossed into here. But Atlanta may decide we'll just take expiring contracts and get off our deal. Because Atlanta's in a real bind right now. I'm not entirely sure at some point Memphis isn't going to have to do the same thing with John Morant. And I don't know if Charlotte might have to do the same thing with LaMelo Ball at some point. The LaMelo Ball still has so much talent. So, understanding how cheap Trae Young would be, is there an interest? Now, there's a whole other question here of whether or not Trae Young is a championship caliber player. And if you go acquire Trae Young, do you just get better, but you don't really fulfill this goal of trying to go get to a championship? Now, he did go to an Eastern Conference Finals once. He is, I think the best way to characterize Trae Young is he's probably an all-star, but not all NBA. In other words, he gets the votes for the all-star team. He puts up the numbers. He's a 4-time all-star. I don't think he'll ever be all NBA. But the guy's having an off year. But let's remember, the last 2 years, he did average 25 points a game and 11 assists. And the offense has to run through him a little bit, but maybe on a Will Hardy team where you're playing off ball, and then you revert into the pick and roll at the end. Will Hardy's a pretty incredible offensive coach. Discussions at least should be held. Do you believe Keyonte is your pure point guard, or would you be better off having Keyonte play off ball? And then there's a whole other question of size at that point, which is, I think, part of the problem the Jazz have right now defensively. Is they're just not very big. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Send me them on Twitter. Hit them on our Discord channel if you're an everydayer. Should the Jazz, if it's virtually free, get involved in Trae Young? Why are we so bad defensively? Next on Locked On Jazz. Tuesday edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai. Located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years, 90 years, 100 years. I lose count. But the point is, they are part of our community. They are a part of what we do. They understand who you are. And Blake is obsessed with making sure that you have the no regrets experience. The Hyundai cars, fabulous. I'm driving the Santa Fe right now. It's incredible. Also, both my kids have the Santa Fe, old Santa Fe's. They've been perfect for us. And my dad has the Ioniq 6, and I've got the Ioniq 5. So the lineup of cars, just fabulous. If you're in the market for a car right now, let's get you involved with Murdoch. We'll set you up with a VIP meeting you deserve as being a Locked On everydayer. And then from there, you can decide whether the car matches for you. But you'll find out for the price, the bells and whistles, there's nothing that can match the Hyundai. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better every Friday night before the game tips off. FanDuel gives you a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, so that's 4 to 5:30 our time, have become appointment viewing of the NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. Always bring something new, boosts, bonuses, or surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing perfect right before games, right before the weekend starts. So, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app. See what's going on during NBA Happy Hour every Friday, 6 to 7:30 Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. Thank you for joining the Everydayer Club. If you have not already, the Everydayer Club's out there for you for $5 a month. We get you access to Locked On Jazz ad-free, exclusive access to Locked On Sports Today, our national daily show, ad-free, and access to the Discord channel. The All Access members get interaction with me on text, one-on-one. They get my game notes that I prep for every game. They get Leaf Tuline's exclusive content. Darren Peterson breakdown update he gave yesterday, I think, available for you. You get 15% off the merch store and access to the merch store. You also get a daily newsletter of every show and more extra bonus content when available, and the ad-free and the Discord. All that's for $15 a month or $150 a year. Go to lockedonjazz.supercast.com. That's lockedonjazz.supercast.com to become a member. Hope to have you aboard. All right. We're bad defensively again. 30th. Last in the NBA. All right, let's start with a few things, and then we'll dig into it. So, one, you're either going to be a good defensive team if, one, you have a big-time center in the middle, or two, you have long athletic wings that are physical defensively. We don't have a big athletic center. He's out for the year. And two, we don't have long athletic wings that are ready to play. Taylor's not a good defensive player and misses rotations at an alarmingly high rate. Still learning. Missed a whole year. Ace Bailey does not understand defense at all. Those two both could be long. I don't know whether they're ever going to be like defensive dogs, as you might think. Cody Williams is long. He's getting a little bit more time. But like we're starting Svi Mikhailuk, who's small. Bryce Sensabaugh, who's not known as a defensive player. Keyonte has never been a good defensive player, and he's average height. And we're playing either Kyle Filipowski or Yusuf Nurkic or Kevin Love as a backup center. Like, before we get like too critical here, this is not a script by which any team should be able to play defense. Like Andy Larson literally asked Will Hardy last night, do you actually have the personnel to even be good defensively? And Will Hardy, at least in a classy manner, said, I'm a coach. I'm never going to believe that our guys can't. But, let's be totally honest. Yusuf Nurkic has been a part of poor defenses. He was a pretty mobile, half-decent guy. He had a leg injury similar to Taylor Hendricks. And since then, he just is not a great defensive player. He does a lot of other things well. There's probably some level here, by the way, like without being like, it's not like entirely not by design, right? Like, let's just make sure we understand that. To Kyle Filipowski's credit, when he's a defensive center, he's about the same as Nurkic. And Kyle Filipowski is not a defensive center. And Kevin Love is 37 and playing center. When Kevin Love is on the floor as our center, our defensive rating is at 136. So, before we go like nuts, and I've seen a bunch of the things like Will Hardy again, like let's look at the personnel. Let's also remember the intention of the seasons. And let's understand what the coaching staff is embarking upon to try to deal with this defensively. I'm going to probably show you, if it works here, 3 plays coming up. And we have two of them are going to show what we have to do from a defensive scheme standpoint because of who our personnel is that I might just argue is fundamentally flawed and makes it incredibly hard to defend. Could we be better? Sure. Like that's Will's point. I'm a coach. I'm going to demand my guys get better. Do we have some guys who, when I go back in the game and watch film or go back and watch, who miss rotations at a pretty high rate. Yeah, we had a night the other night where we gave up 3 straight wide open threes. Home game. I'd have to go back and look at who it was. And the same guy missed all 3 rotations. Like, he went down to try to steal on a play that, frankly, when you're in AAU or college, you probably get away with, one, because you probably pull off the steal because you're the best athlete on the floor, and 2, when they kick it out to the guy, he's not a very good shooter. And in the NBA, that is a knockdown, wide-open 3. Either because of personnel or because of some of the schematic things that we have to do to try to survive possessions, we're allowing the most open threes in the NBA. And what I would say about that is that in this day and age in the NBA, guys make open threes. In fact, the average shooter right now on a wide open 3, 6 feet or less, is nearly 40% in the NBA. Average shooter. Understand that the players that are left more often than not 6 feet open or more are done so on purpose. The old Jerry Sloan son, there might be a reason why you're open. And players are shooting 39% on those. So if it's a half-decent player, they're busting over 40%. The Jazz now allow the second most wide open threes a night in the NBA at 24.6. Here's the thing. We've talked about this in the past. What's interesting is, to some extent, Will Hardy schematically has built a defense that is at least forcing the shots the Jazz want to force. So if you look, what the Jazz want to do is they want to take away the rim, and they want to take away the corner three. Stunningly, with Yusuf Nurkic, Kyle Filipowski, and Kevin Love as your centers, the Jazz allow the fewest shots of any team in the NBA at the rim. It's pretty great, at least according to Cleaning the Glass. Some others, second spectrum, some others have some slightly different numbers. They're the 12th best team in the league at denying the corner three. They really actually are doing this about as well as anyone. Ironically enough, Sacramento is the other team that's doing this well, and then they're second last in the NBA in effective field goal percentage defense, and we're last, which does beg a little bit of a question. And the Clippers are doing this pretty well. They're the 7th best team at the rim and the 7th best team in quarter threes, and they're 23rd in the league in effective field goal percentage defense. So it does beg the question a little bit of, like, are you overselling out in some way? Are all three of them overselling out in some way? Just kind of makes you go, Now, the Clippers are 26th in the league in overall three-point shooting defense and the worst in the league on above the break. We're 23rd in the league in above the break defense. And Sacramento's 20th. So I don't quite know what that all does. What I would say is that both Sacramento and Utah, when people do get to the rim, they score at the highest rate in the league. So you have to deny it because we have nobody can. Once you get to the rim, you're scoring on us every time. So my point of this is we're actually doing a pretty good job of denying the right shots. We're just to be able to do it, we're often putting ourselves in just horrific scrambles. And we'll look at that next on Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by Quo. You can get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. This time of year is the time of year where businesses look at the messy parts of what they do I think there's got to be a better way. And that's where Quo comes in. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode brought to you by Quo, QUO, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with your customers. So Quo is simple. It works right from your phone or computer. You can keep even your existing number. Their smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, highlight next steps. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free plus 20% off your first 6 months when you go to QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. I don't know why I do that with Game Time. It just seems like the right thing to do. Use the code LockedOnNBA for your first purchase. $20 off with Game Time. Game Time's great. Ticketing app that does everything you need. So during basketball season, energy, crowd, firing you up, getting you ready, whatever the tickets are going to be, well, Game Time gives you the advantage. Browsing Game Time app, straightforward, intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. Shows all the fees up front. And then they have zone deals, which help you unlock great seats at even better value. Whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is there for you in one place. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LockedOnNBA. LockedOnNBA for $20 off first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get into the action with Game Time. All right, let me see if I can get this to work. Sometimes this doesn't work because I have multiple windows and multiple browsers for different things, namely for Locked On as well as for others. And so it sometimes means that I cannot get it to do exactly what I want. So let's see if I can. I want to show you 3 plays from the other night. And a little bit like you could decide from watching this that either, oh my gosh, I can't believe the Jazz have this scheme. The scheme is terrible. Or if you actually take a second and back up and say, well, why would the Jazz have a scheme that seems to be terrible? And it's because we want to protect the rim. We don't have bigs that are big enough to play drop coverage like Walker. And we don't have bigs that are mobile enough to be able to just switch 1 through 5. So here comes Portland up the floor. And they're going to run just a basic pick and roll. Now, what's unnerving here is Portland's the worst pick and roll team in the NBA. But we're not. We're kind of the worst pick and roll defense. And so Portland's going to run a pick and roll. Donovan Clingan's going to set a pick for Shaedon Sharpe on a basic high pick and roll. Keyonte's on the ball. Clingan sets the pick. Will Hardy last night talks about we got to avoid picks. Okay, that's first. Keyonte gets over it. Now, usually you have kind of 2 or 3 choices defensively. One is you play drop coverage and you stay lower than the roll man, which is what we did with Rudy Gobert for all those years, and we do with Walker. Or 2, you switch. What the Jazz are doing is stringing the ball out to prevent it from penetrating. So Filipowski stays with the ball until Keyonte gets back. the impact of that is that when Klingon starts to roll, the low man on the weak side, in this case Taylor Hendricks, has to be ready to roll over. Now, Taylor rolls way too early, but at least he executes it. It leaves Svi Mikhailuk on the right side of the floor on the weak side with guarding two men. And he denies a pass to Chris Murray, which Chris Murray shoots 26% from three. We don't care if he shoots. And Avida gets a wide open three. So this is one of those plays where it's like everyone's intention was right. They stretch it out. Hendricks rolls over to Klingon to be early to avoid Klingon on the dunk, but he probably goes too early, which then leaves Svi dead on an island guarding two guys. Svi reacts as quickly as he can, tries to take away the pass to the corner because we're trying to deny corner threes. But in this case, with personnel, you probably got to close to Avida and force him to drive with his left hand. Instead, he hits a three. It's not a amazing example, but it at least shows the difficulty. And I went through all of Avida's shots to try to figure out why he was getting some egregiously good looks. And that was one of the egregiously good looks. And it's what happens. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one, I believe, is where either Avila ends up wide open at the top, or this is where we just don't maintain the ball in open court. So here comes Caleb Love. This is we just don't maintain the ball in open court. Isaiah Collier's defending, and Isaiah just is not. This is just poor defense. So Isaiah, at the point of attack, this is what happens a ton of times, just gets beat into the paint. They get a quick action back to Avida. Collier's got to get back in front of him, which is hard, and he blows right by him. I mean, that is just ridiculously easy. Love pushes up the floor. Isaiah's a little vertical. Love hits him with a quick step. Collier's beat. Svi helps him out. Collier's got to get back. Avida just goes straight down the middle of the boulevard. That one seems to be self-explanatory, but there were three egregious plays where it was so easy that I went back to look. That was one of them. And we have that a lot. We're not great on point of attack. Here's another one that shows kind of, because what our defensive scheme is and what we have to do, how difficult it is. So half-court set, Avida at the top, small pick and roll with Kamara. Filipowski's there. You could consider switching this. Filipowski comes over, stops the ball. Svi decides to try to get back. So Kamara is now rolling. Kamara is basically, Robert Williams is in as their center. So this one's I'm not sure why they didn't just switch this, frankly. And Svi didn't just stay in Kamara, but he doesn't. So now this is the stretch out the ball. Kamara's the roller. The low man is Lauri Markkanen. He rolls over nicely, cuts off Kamara so he doesn't get a layup. Keyonte George drops down nicely to make sure that Robert Williams doesn't get a dunk, which leaves Shaedon Sharpe wide open on the left side. He's 32% three-point shooter, is making shots last night. So Keyonte starts to close. Svi rotates. We now have, in the scramble, two guys going to Svi, going to Sharpe. Filipowski is rolled back down. He's not really guarding anyone, but he's going to get back down to either Kamara or Williams. And Keyonte is stuck in no man's land, wide open, Avida three. The answer here is once Key goes down and Svi starts to rotate, I think Key has to know he's coming to the top. That's hard. I mean, this is where you hear defenses saying they're on a string. the problem all lies at the top. That once Filipowski stretches out Avila, either Svi's got to stay on Kamara, or once Svi tries to get back, and we're now back in full rotation out of it, Markkanen is rolled over as the low man. Keyonte's got to come down and prevent the dunker. And you're just into full-out rotation, all stemming back from you don't have a big guy who can play drop coverage or wings that can play switch. So that's a lot of what's going on. And that is Locked On Jazz today. If you want to join us on social, you can join me at DLock09 tomorrow, Wednesday edition of Locked On Jazz coming your direction. Will's Wednesday. He had some interesting comments last night. We'll try to get some of those to you. You can follow me on socials at DLock09, TikTok, Instagram, X, also Everydayer Club, all access. We're going to make it great. It's a lot. It's $150 a year. So we give you all the game notes, all the inside scoop. We'll react to rumors. Leaf Tulane gives you bonus content. Leaf Tulane gives you draft breakdowns that are exclusive only on all access. 15% off the merch store. Daily newsletter in your inbox. One-on-one text communication with me and interaction. You have your own private line to me, plus the Discord channel, plus Locked On Sports Today, plus ad-free Locked On Jazz. All for $15 a month or $150 a year. Have a great day. We now send you the first ever national 24/7 NBA YouTube channel, Locked On NBA, or on audio. Check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Your every game, every night.